went up your nose, Corey?
Right. We put in, what was that? Tea tree oil, charcoal, biosin.
Yeah, biotin, botanicals, tea tree oil, and then we had GI detox, which is activated charcoal, apple pectin, silica, zeolite clay, and I think bentonite clay as well.
Why did I do that?
Why did you do that?
Yeah.
I wanted to watch you cry. No, so I mean, when we look at the microbiomes in the body, you've obviously got your gut, which is the main one people talk about, but we've also got our sinuses and our nasal microbiome. So same sort of concept as taking botanicals for your gut, taking them in the nasal microbiome, especially when we have something called marcons, or essentially we can have like mold toxicity in the nose, viruses, which, you know, a big incubation point for viruses and mold through the nasal cavity when we breathe them in, or upper respiratory tract infections. So, yeah.
Dude, I can breathe so good. We're just sitting here, we're going like,
yeah. Clear as day. I feel like
gave
we've
me-
had a massive coffee as well.
yeah, it actually gave me a bit of a charge.
Yeah.
I might sound a little bit nasally because I got like some stuff like still stuck in my nose, but
Not bad.
not bad.
Round 2.
Not bad. Yeah.
I meant to do it twice a day, every day for a week. So, I mean, that's one dose out of 14. So, by the end of it, you'd be laughing.
Yeah, and that's like, it was so interesting because obviously like you wouldn't think that you have microbiome in your nose.
Yeah.
It's like,
makes sense though. I mean, you got your nasal microbiome, you got your sinus microbiome, you got your oral microbiome, you got your lung microbiome, and then you've obviously got the main one people talk about, which is your gut. And then we think about for females and males, you know, you've got your downstairs microbiome, which is obviously quite important too.
yeah.
So
what about if you've lost a foreskin?
Yeah, you can't find it.
I got snipped off when I was a baby.
Yeah. Oh, mate, you have to try and look for it. No. Obviously, obviously that acts as a barrier to the outside world, so it is part of it. But I mean, I don't actually know too much on that one, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
That's all I was like, yeah, I'm monitoring microbiome. That should be,
I mean, it's a barrier. Like
something
it's a part of your skin from the external world. If you lost it, I mean, you would have built up more resistance from, you know, having the last 30 years without having one though. So, I mean, there's actually like, people always say that people who have had that are more like less susceptible, and it's better because, I mean, in terms of like having the foreskin, you have more chance of bacteria, you know, populating within the, you know, within the foreskin.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as if you have a foreskin, obviously you just got to clean it properly. How do we start talking about foreskin?
Yeah. And everyone's got tea tree oil like inside the foreskin. Like, oh, god damn. Yeah, I don't know how we got on there. We're just talking about microbiomes. Interesting. You've been helping me fix my back. It's been like super interesting with what we've been like learning. And oh my goodness, in terms of, because like invested into Dan as like a health coach, but it's crazy. Like for me, just like some realizations of like thinking my core was strong and thinking that I trained enough. And then just going for a period of time, like working in my office chair, training in the gym. I'd do some bodybuilding exercises. I'd come home, I'd like work, and then I'd go for like a 20-minute walk. And that was like roughly, I'm like, oh, that's enough because I'm in like a bulking phase right now. Wasn't doing any stretching, wasn't doing any strengthening of any other areas, no like yoga, Pilates, anything like that, which I find gold now. And it's not how that's like the norm. And then next minute, I have a massive bulging disc.
Hectic.
Yeah, crazy. So like,
it was pretty, it wasn't like a massive event or anything, kind of just happened out of nowhere too.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's just crazy, like for anyone who's at that stage where, you know, they know they're sitting down a bit and they haven't got like good core strength or anything, or you're just stuck in a routine and working. It's like, man, if you're not doing something about it, like me being one of the healthiest people I know, I'm like, if that can get me, it can get anyone.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's like a case of it's not being strong, or, you know, you're not, like, obviously you're strong, you're conditioned, you look after yourself, you do all the right things, but there's a difference between being like generally strong versus specifically strong. I think that's also what comes into it when you look at like bodybuilders, powerlifters, high level athletes, and it's like, you know, yes, they're globally strong, but if you don't work on that sort of segmental stability and that segmental strength, you know, you can still be susceptible to getting these things happen. And obviously like fear mongering or anything, everyone's going to get injured at some stage in their life, but it's like we can obviously do certain things to try and mitigate the risk of that.
Yeah. And what I find like really interesting about you is I'm like, it's interesting that you know so much about the body and that you studied all the functional medicine stuff as well. So you know everything about the blood tests, you know about gut microbiome stuff. And you know, like it's really interesting is when like working with Dan, like when we did all my blood tests, it was so cool because most of the time when I look at blood tests, I just look at like like I look at my cholesterols, look at my like testosterone. So I basically ignore everything in the red blood cells, and I just look at what the markers say. And I'm like, oh, this is my do it. But it's so funny because you're like, well, I almost don't look at anything else. I look at the red blood cells first, and then you're like, it's so crazy how you can deduct roughly what is going on inside your body whilst looking at blood tests, and at the same time knowing lots about like the whole body as well. How did you like learn this, and what are the like similarities and the patterns that you find between the body and like on the outside of the body and the inside of the body?
I think, I mean, obviously, yeah, like over the last 10 years, it's been learning, like started off as a personal trainer and was always into all the strength conditioning, bodybuilding, like started off as a bro, as we all did, you know, bicep curls and a photo of Ziz in the room. And then, yeah, went into osteopathy, you know, more rehabilitation, and like even osteo, it's very like, we get taught holistic, but I'd say it's very predominant on like the musculoskeletal system. We talk about these other systems, but we never go like deep into it, or maybe we did and I didn't pay attention. Yeah. At uni, didn't appreciate it that much. It wasn't until really a few years after uni I started to get a lot of patients that weren't getting better. And I think the patients that don't get better always teach you the most, and you either put your ego up and say it's their fault, or you look into why they're not getting better, which is the path I took, and sought out some mentors I was telling you about off air before, and those guys been more holistic into the sort of functional medicine, integrated medicine world. And I think there's a lot of similarities between like mechanical and medicine. There's obviously a lot of differences, but like the key principle I think is the same. And the thing I resonate with the most is my approach has always been like, look at the whole, zoom out, and look at how different things interrelate and communicate. So like if you had a shoulder injury, the approach is going to be like, we don't just look at the shoulder. Obviously, we're going to zoom out. We're going to go, how does the whole body function as a whole? How does the shoulder integrate with the shoulder blade, integrate with the thoracic spine, integrate with the rib cage? How does that integrate with breathing? How does the rib cage and pelvis work together? Like, so we look at it holistically and we go, all right, well, how does these other joints and other areas influence the site or the presentation of pain where you're getting the symptom? If we then go into sort of functional medicine or integrated medicine, whatever you want to call it, same principle. You come to me and you say, you have this, presentation or this symptom, or, in the medical model, it's usually we have, an organ that is currently under stress, an organ that currently has a diagnosis. Like we have Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid issue. We have Crohn's disease, which is a gut issue. We've got Alzheimer's, which is a neurological issue. It's like, well, if we just look at that through a lens and go, into the reductionist model of like, you have a gut problem, let's look at the gut. You have a thyroid problem, let's look at the thyroid. Like you mentioned on the blood test before, like you look at cholesterol, you're missing a big piece of the puzzle. And a lot of times we're just looking at where the site of pain is or where the symptom is to get the answers, as you saw when we did our work together, it's like to get the actual answers of why you have the symptom or the presentation or the diagnosis you have, you need to be able to look out and go, need to understand everything really well individually. Like I need to understand the gut, I need to understand the immune, I need to understand the nervous, the thyroid, the liver, but then I have to understand how these things communicate and integrate to then have a true representation, in 5D essentially of like how the body's actually working. And then once you know what's right, you can figure out what's wrong. But until you know what's right, it's going to be very, very hard to look at those tests. And that's where I think context is key. And like you've probably experienced this, and a lot of people listening too, is you go, get your bloods done, and you go take it to a GP or a practitioner, and everything's normal, but you don't feel normal, which we've all experienced before. And it's like, well, the confusion is like, well, if it's all normal, why do I feel this way? But it's like, well, the test is still the same test when I read it and the GP reads it, but like it's more the interpretation, the lens you're looking at it through based off the understanding of how those systems interrelate. If you're just looking at, cholesterol in isolation, cool, that's fine, tick, next thing, tick, but you're not seeing how those things communicate. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Yep. Crazy. And like, I was actually really like interested in, like blew my mind a little bit about like you talking about the immune system, and then also understanding like with like my back when you were just like, I think you're just under a lot of neurological stress, and that's one of the main reasons that this has manifested. And I was like, what? A disc bulge manifesting from neurological stress? What? Blew my brain.
Yeah, I think.
By the way, can you move your mic? Just move the whole thing.
That way.
Yep, and then point it a little bit this way, like to the side. Like point the mic that way, and then move it that way more. That way, a little bit more.
That.
Yeah, and then point it a little bit more towards you. Just good content purposes.
Perfect.
Yeah, more Dan's face.
Moneymaker.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I remember that conversation. I was like, this guy's going to think I'm woo-woo. But I think that's like, that literally highlights everything we're talking about there in terms of integration of systems. And this is where this was literally the reason why I went down into learning more the functional medicine, integrated medicine stuff, because I'd have patients like you in 2019, 2020 when I'd first started practicing as an osteo, and it was very like mechanical. It was like, we need to get you strong. We need to work on your flexibility. We need to work on your stability. Yeah. Everyone needs to be doing deadlifts and core work, and this is going to cure everything until it doesn't. And then you get these people where you're like, mechanically wise, you're pretty sound. You're pretty strong. You're someone who trains a lot. You have good range of motion, flexibility. Like someone's not adding up. Then that's where it's like, well, hang on a minute. There's all these different systems in the body, and we're looking at one system. So how can you truly say you're holistic? And I think it's like obviously a step better to go, hey, someone has shoulder pain, we look at the entire body. But if we're only looking at the entire body from a biomechanical approach, then we're still being relatively reductionist because we're not seeing these other systems. So that's the first thing. Second thing would be in terms of like with your presentation. So when we look at the body, and like this is a concept I learned from Perry Nicholson from Stop Chasing Pain, is like the body has a hierarchy, which makes sense of what's important for survival versus what's not. And the easiest way we can explain it is like, imagine you go to Woolies and you have $100 cash in hand, and there's no credit cards, there's no FPOS, you just have old school $100, yeah. And you go to the checkout, you swipe all your stuff, and it's $120. What do you do?
I'd ask someone for $20.
Resourceful. If you didn't have $20, you'd start to prioritize, yeah.
Oh yeah, go through. That's what my brain goes. I'm like, I ask people for stuff. I'm afraid of putting them out of practice. Sorry guys, got me money please. But yeah, obviously, if there's no one around, you'd be like, well, what's the most important shit?
Yeah, so you start to prioritize. Naturally, you go, okay, what's essential versus not essential. So you might put your steak through your eggs, your dairy, your vegetables, your fruits, etc. And then you get to the end, you're like, I don't really need the chocolate. Yeah, it's like it's nice to have, not needs to have. And it's the same with your body. It's like we have a hierarchy of systems in the body, and it's like the immune system, the nervous system, your gut, your lymphatic system, those are the kings. Like if you can't live without those guys very long, yeah? And then we go down further, it's the liver, it's the circulatory system, it's the nerves. We get to the bottom, which is system number 8. This is the endocrine system. This is where your hormones are. So a lot of, males experience low testosterone when they're in high levels of stress. A lot of females, lose their cycle when they're competing in high levels of stress. Then the bottom of the chart is your musculoskeletal system. So you got to think, it's like if you're having symptoms, presentations in the bottom system on the hierarchy in the pyramid, maybe there's a problem upstream that's causing that, and we're just seeing a symptom down the bottom of the food
like
chain.
Immune system, you got an immune system function,
Yeah.
and it's affecting your testosterone, even though you think it's low test or something. It's like, hey, actually, you've got some bacteria, you've got some infections. You have to go clean your guts.
Could be, yeah. It's like there's a lot of things.
There's leaps, but
yeah. But the overall, like what I said to you, is like there's too much systemic. So systemic meaning the system. There's too much systemic stress in the body right now, and the body's trying to buffer stress, and it's trying to prioritize and go, all right, well, out of everything we need to operate right now, which ones are essential, which ones are not essential? And the non-essential ones we're turning off. Do I need big biceps? Nice to have, not need to have. Do I need a period? If I'm quite stressed right now, do I really need to bring in other humans to this world? Probably not. Let's shut that off. Do I need to have high testosterone right now? I would love to be having sex twice a day, but probably don't need it right now. I don't have much energy. So we start to see these lower systems. We have presentations and symptoms, but we have problems or root causes in these higher systems. And that's usually a combination of, infection is a big one, which we talked about. Biochemical stress. So biochemical stress being nutrition, diet, like a lot of the foods we're eating, as you know, we're eating inflammatory foods and we're poisoning ourselves with, food-like products and, nonsense. That's also going to add stress to the system. We've got emotional and psychological stress, which we know is also a big factor. Emotions drive a lot of the physical ailments we see.
What do you mean by that?
In terms of the emotions?
Yeah,
well, think about it in terms of like your brain. Your brain just knows stress. Yeah, your brain doesn't have like an individual bucket for, this is my emotional stress. This is my business stress. This is my finance stress. This is my training stress. Your body just has one bucket, and there's an input.
Email and being chased by a bear, same thing.
Pretty much to your brain.
Yeah.
Your brain doesn't ask questions. Your brain shoots and then asks questions later. So your sympathetic nerve, the whole idea of your brain is survival and protection. Yeah. So it's like if you're walking home late at night and you hear some ruffling in the bushes, you're walking home through Southport, Yeah. You know, your natural innate response is probably going to be to stay away from that bush. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you and me were out for a drink and you've had a few too many and it could have been you in the bush. Yeah. But you know, my natural reaction is going to be like, let's stay safe rather than go into that bush and see if it's you. Because if it is you, happy days. If it's not you and it's someone else who's dangerous, you know, I could be dead. So it's like your brain's natural response is always going to be safety first, ask questions later. We don't really differentiate between the different types of stresses. This is one stimulus, and then the summation of that stimulus is what creates that, what I said to you before, like the systemic stress.
So we stay away from the bush.
We stay away from the bush.
Damn.
I'm doing it wrong my whole
We
life.
could go to it, damn it. But I like bush. No.
So then, like for your back, for example, what I was saying to you was like, so think that stress, we're having inputs from all different areas. We've got potential infection, we've got nutrition and diet, we've got emotions and stress, we've got training stress, we've got work stress, we've got financial stress, we've got all these different stresses that are coming in different forms, biochemical, emotional, physical, etc. That stress is then going to summate, and it's like the same way we think about injuries, where we go, right, if I looked at a bicep, it's like a bicep has a certain amount of threshold it can take. We have what I call tolerance, which is like where this is neurological. It's like if your body gets to its level of tolerance, if we exceed that, we start to get pain. There's no damage at this point, but it's essentially your brain saying, hey, we're getting close to capacity right now. Let's like pull the handbrake so you don't do any damage. If we ignore that and we keep pushing through it, which is why I always say to you, stop pushing through pain. We get to the level of capacity, and capacity is more physics. This is biomechanics. So this is if your bicep can handle 100 newtons of force and we apply 101, your bicep will snap. There's no emotions, there's no feelings, there's no opinions on this one. It is physics. That is why technique is important. So for that one, it's like that's where we actually have damage essentially. So in terms of that, it's like, well, if we have all this massive like amount of stress in the body from all these other areas, we're already sort of at that tolerance or capacity potentially, and then you got to do something that's insignificant. You bend over to pick up your pencil, you're doing your bed sheets, you washing your hair, and all of a sudden your shoulder goes, your back goes. You're like, oh, that's strange. Like that's not a massive stress or activity. Why have I had this issue? And it's like that's what I was saying to you. It's like you've got so much going on outside of it. Didn't really take much for you to then have this presentation. And then, even with our rehab efforts, it's like we're doing all the right things in the mechanical perspective, but there's just too much stress going on. We need to buffer some of that stress. So your body has the cash, that extra $20 to go and heal these bottom systems, because at the moment we don't have enough.
Yeah. So, and it's like, it's crazy. It's a good analogy actually using of money. And it's like, okay, so with all the stress, let's say working hard, emotional stress, financial stress, business stress, leadership stress, whatever it is, it's like, okay, you're spending all your body's energies, money on all of those different areas. And what you want to do is for your body is make more energy, make more money by like having sauna, meditating, eating really well, not putting anything that's going to be stressful on your body, like into your body, taking time to really relax, eat more calories so you're in a surplus, not a deficit, so you're not being stressed, and like doing all the right things and getting back to that. So that way your body starts healing, because otherwise it's never going to heal.
Yeah, 100%. Or rather than getting an extra $20, fix your spending problem.
Oh, yeah.
We can see our mindsets here. I'm the exact same.
I like that.
Good at making money, good at spending money. So like in that situation, it's like, well, you're banging on. It's like, we could eat more food. Like a lot of people I see, especially athletes, like endurance athletes or high level people, it's like, they do have a relative energy deficiency. So eating more food, sleeping more, doing more restorative activities that fill your bucket and give you more is great. But it's like, it doesn't have to be an either or, it's a both. So it's like, well, what are the things that are creating that stress that is now requiring extra energy? So think in this case, it's like money is energy, energy is ATP. So it's like, well, if you have an infection, your body's using an extra energy to try and fight infection. Your immune system's in overdrive. There's increase in inflammation. Your liver's working harder to detox. Your kidneys are working harder. There's a lot of extra stress happening in the body that's taking up a lot of that money. So rather than make extra $20, can we reduce, the cost of our grocery spend by 50? Yeah,
Dad said the same thing. So my dad had to have, he had carpal tunnel in his wrists, and he's supposed to be like going for an operation where they go like put a needle into his wrist and they basically snip the carpal tunnel so he can start moving and using his fingers, because all his fingers went numb. And he's had 2 operations on his shoulders recently. So he's been out for a long period of time out. And then also like he's been working with you. So he's been like eating the good food. He's been like doing all the right things. And he's like, my carpal tunnel went. He's like, it's gone now.
Why didn't you tell me that? That's hectic.
Dude, it's crazy. It's gone. Yeah. He's like, dude, I got all feeling in my fingers now. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Again, I'm like, immediately for me, because like you've told me that beforehand, is my brain's like, oh, his body's literally had time to calm down and go, oh, I'm going to send some shit to the wrist to actually heal it now because you've been saving all your money, saving all your energy. Now you can go and spend it here. And it has.
Yeah.
Dude, healed carpet tunnel.
That's hectic. I wish you told me that.
What the hell? I know. He's like, I've been out my bike. I've been having a great time. I was like, what the hell, man? That's crazy.
But that's so funny. I feel like I never hear from him. But then every time I talk to you, like, man, he's lost 10 kilos and he's done all this. And you're like,
yeah, you got to call him. He's old school. Like, dads are like that. Anytime I talk to any of them, the messages are like, you are wet. They call him and they tell you everything. Like, oh my goodness. Yeah. So what do you think are like, because like I'm interested in this just in general from like your practice. What are the most common problems that you see, like in terms of what men want and what happened to women?
I'd say it's changed. Like in private practice, like face to face, it's more your typical, your like back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain are always going to be the three biggest ones.
What do they usually cause from, just like real briefly?
Usually a bit of A and B. Number one is usually some sort of mechanical issues. So they've either lost mobility, flexibility somewhere and they're overloading other areas of their body, or a lack of strength and stability. So usually it's a combination of one of the two, or again, what we talked about before. So I actually have a graph on this I can send to you afterwards, but it's like, imagine a Venn diagram. On one side, you've got mechanical, and on the other side, you've got physiological. Combine those two factors, that's usually the sort of underlying process of a injury.
Yeah, because I swear to God, just like after like learning a lot and like talking to you, I'm like, it literally just comes down to hip strength, mobility, and flexibility, and then top of trunk, spine, flexibility, mobility, and strength. Yeah. And I'm like,
have you heard of the joint by joint model?
God damn, no. It's
the joint by joint model. I think it's Gary Cook, maybe. If I've butchered that, apologies. But essentially, we think of the body as like an alternating zigzag pattern, and each joint is alternating between mobile and stable. So obviously every joint needs to have a degree of both, but it's like if you go from the ground up, it's like
ankles mobile,
ankles
stable.
Mobile, knee stable, hip mobile, lumbar spine stable, T-spine mobile, lower cervical stable, upper cervical mobile, same if we go shoulders, it's like T-spine mobile, scapula stable, glenohumeral joint mobile, elbow stable, wrist mobile. So usually what we see in those scenarios is, well, dirty boy.
I just made a movement. I moved my elbow up and down, and then I moved my wrist like left and right in a way that looks like I was jacking something off.
That pronation gains. So like usually, like to answer your question on those ones, it's like, well, if we've lost, you've either got hypermobility at a joint that is meant to be stable. So it's like if you have hypermobility of a lumbar spine, a knee, it's never really going to end too well because we know those joints, we want them to be relatively rigid. They still need a degree of motion, but we want them to be relatively rigid. Or on the flip side, we've got joints that are designed to be highly mobile and they've lost mobility, so they're hypomobile. Usually what I see is we lose mobility at the mobile joints, let's say the T-spine and the hip. And then as a byproduct of that, your body's an adaptation machine. So it goes, well, if I can't get this motion at the hip, where else can I get it?
So it tries to take it from the stable bits.
Yeah, so I can get above and below. What's above your hip? Your lumbar spine. What's below your hip? Your knee. Now all of a sudden you've got...
So we've got bad knees.
Yeah, it's now all of a sudden you've got knee pain and back pain and...
So because we need to be more mobile, like strengthen and lengthen, like more mobile and strength in a mobile position in your hips most of the time, or your ankles will help fix your knee.
100%, yeah. So I think, sometimes I get a bad rap for not liking stretching, but it's like, I'm not against stretching. I think what the principle is, again, we always want to think principles, not absolutes, is like stretching is just a form of mobilization, yeah? Like you want to have every joint in your body have access to full range of motion without limitation or restriction. Because the first step is going to be, we need to actually access a range of motion. Yeah. When we can access that range of motion, then we can obviously strengthen that range of motion. If I can't get my shoulder overhead, I can't really strengthen and stabilize my shoulder where it's unstable. So it's like step one is, we need to have full range of motion through T-spine, through glenohumeral joint, scapula. So now I can load this position where my shoulder needs it the most. Because down here, happy days. I don't know many people who get injured down here.
Yeah.
But where do people get injured in their shoulders? They're playing footy, they tackle, their arms are overhead.
Up to the side, it's not down low. Yeah.
So it's the same as every joint in the body. So it's like step one we want to think is, restore flexibility, have access to range of motion. Step two is we then need to be granted access to range of motion. So the central nervous system allows us to use what we have, and that's mobility. And now that we can access unstable positions, we can now train and improve, the stabilization of a joint in relatively unstable positions.
I really like what are some of the other most common problems that you see in terms of what like men want and what like happen to women?
Yeah, and also I think on that, what you just said there, see how that highlights the need to zoom out and have that integrated approach?
Yeah.
Because if we just look to your knee when you have knee pain, it's like, we'd be like, oh, the knee's fine, or you just got bad knees. But it's like, until we zoom out and go look at every other joint around the body, it's like we don't understand it.
Yeah, literally. I understand that's why my back went.
So step one is like, we go knee pain, look at the knee. Step two is let's look at the whole body mechanically. And then step three is let's look at the whole body systemically. And now we have a full picture.
Yeah.
In terms of most common things, females tend to have a lot more common autoimmune diseases. There's a 4-to-1 ratio.
What happens as a reflection of that? Is it like,
so you'll see the PCOS.
Like sore, like we'll dumb it down for people. Is it like sore guts, skin?
Yes.
Like what's
so like bloating, skin issues like eczema, hives, acne, bloating, food sensitivities, reacting to things like gluten, dairy is a common one. And again, people kind of blame the symptom rather than chase the actual problem. So that's a common one for females. Obviously, loss of cycle, irregular cycles, painful cycles. That's a big one too. So I mean, in terms of PCOS and endo, that's going to be one of the common symptoms. It's like, you have very heavy bleeds, very painful bleeds. You might be bedridden.
I couldn't imagine just like once a month, just like dreading knowing that something's going to happen to you. And you're just like, oh, my whole body's like going to shut down for like a week. This is the worst.
Yeah, 100%. And then for men, men always just like come and like, I just want my T to be as high as possible. I want to be jacked. Which I'm getting a lot of that lately.
What are the like main problems? What are like a lot of the problems that you see guys have? Like
usually it's libido, energy, focus. I'm finding a lot of like cognitive issues. So like men tend to have a lot more cognitive neurological issues, and there's like evidence to support that in terms of like men have a higher incidence of things like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, like neurological disorders, versus females tend to have a much higher incidence of autoimmune.
So why is it? Why do we have?
Driven by hormones. So like in terms of a lot of those ones we talked about with like endo, PCOS, are obviously very driven by like estrogen, progesterone, versus with all of the autoimmune diseases that for neurological are more driven by testosterone and those pathways. So it's more just like our underlying physiology will drive us to different pathways. Yeah. Like it doesn't mean a female can't get Alzheimer's and a male, obviously a male can't get endo or PCOS, but like we can still obviously have aspects of both. But in terms of the incidence, you'd see roughly, probably about 4 times more females get that and males get that.
So most dudes come in quick, or they're not getting up. They can't last very long.
Yeah.
They
or just lack of desire, lack of
desire. They're feeling stressed as hell. They can't focus.
Difficulty building muscle, unable to lose body fat, especially around the sort of the man boobs, the gut.
Yeah.
Lack of energy, focus, motivation, drive is a big one.
Yeah. What's like, and what's like, do you think some of the most like common, what's like the common thing that is making that worse? Common wise, because not so specific per each individual.
See my brains.
You're like, it's like if you just like rack them up and be like,
I'd say it probably comes down to a combination of the 3 in terms of like food and diet is, I'd say 100% almost prevalent in every single person I see.
I can't wait. We're gonna get into food and diet in a second, guys.
Like food and diet's number one. Like food is medicine, and your first line of defense is the shopping center.
We just break some myths. We're gonna break some myths in a minute because I do the same thing here. First line of defense.
First line of defense is in the kitchen.
I literally think I'm like even before that. Like my brain is like it's literally you start. It doesn't start like prepping in the kitchen. It's like it starts with like
buying the right food.
Paying for food.
Yeah.
Selecting the food in the right areas and being like, I'm going to buy this shit.
Reading the ingredients and being aware. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say food. So we can think like sort of biochemical food, products we use. So a lot of guys I know are using just, we're still using Lynx deodorant, Lynx body wash, all these things that are kind of high in a lot of toxins that we're not aware of.
Dude, I hardly shower.
Really?
Yeah. You
smell great.
Thank you.
So that's the thing though. It's like if you should have a natural body odor that smells quite good if you are healthy. Otherwise, it's like body odor is your body trying to excrete toxins through your largest organ, the skin.
Yeah, I'll shower like probably 5 to 6 times a week. I probably have like like almost 1 day off, and then like because I body scrub as well.
Yeah, the dry body brushing.
Yeah, but I do it wet in the shower. It's probably naughty boy now. I get in the shower and I go, it hurts so bad. It's like you get this brush and you like rub it over your whole body to like get rid of all your toxins and shit.
Just more stimulating your lymphatic system, bringing it back would be food, number one. Number 2 is usually environment and products, things like that we're using. Stress is huge, obviously, like we talked about before, stress from different types of areas. And then 4, which is quite common these days, is some sort of underlying or unresolved chronic or acute or chronic infection.
Yeah, which I kind of think, especially when you're in your like mid to later 20s. So if anyone's 20 years old and it's like, oh, you're approaching 25, it's like you've done some stuff. You've either had some traveling, you've experienced some stress, you've had some things happen in your life, and now it's like, man, like, when was the last time I even thought about this? Like, when was it like for my old man when he first started fasting? I was like, dude, like, when was the last time you ever went for a period of time without any food and like let your body heal? He was like, I'm 50 years old. I'm like, yeah, 50 years, right? You know what I mean? So I'm like, there's some stuff there that has to be healed. And even like for me, thinking, I was like, oh, no, I should be sweet. Like, I've done all the healthy, I've done these preps, I've eaten all this stuff. And then you're like, yeah, so there's a bacteria infection in your guts by the look of it. So let's go attack it, try some things and do some blood tests again to see if we've actually got it or not. And I'm like, wow, that's actually so interesting, because it's not like I'm sick. It's not like anything else is like happening. Like I feel good majority of the time.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that all the markers show that. And you're like, oh. And it's like, when have we ever gone through a period, especially when you get to 25 to 30, where it's like you've actually spent some serious focused time on seeing if there's anything going on and trying to heal it.
Yeah, 100%. I think they call them like stealth infections, and the reason they say that is because they're silent. You don't really notice them a lot of times. And I think what happens with a lot of people is we don't get this massive, like, most people are expecting it to be like a barley belly. Yeah, it's like you wake up you don't even wake up, you're just sitting there, and the next minute you're projectile vomiting, and it's like slap in the face. I think with a lot of these like stealth infections, it's like, it's not necessarily a slap in the face. It's like this gradual onset that happens in the background where, if I asked you subjectively how you're feeling, it's like, you're feeling a 9.5, a 9.4, 9.3. It's like you don't really notice a massive significant difference, so you don't feel like there's a problem. And that's where blood work is useful, because it's like if we just base everything off feel and emotions, it can be very inaccurate. So it's like your bloods don't lie. Even if you tell me you're feeling good and I see this in your blood test, it's like, well, a lot of people just are so used to feeling the way they're feeling, and they have this new, essentially like hedonic set point where I felt this way for so long, and it's been such a gradual transitional change that I don't actually know what a 10 feels like anymore, because I'm so used to feeling like a 6. And it's not till you do the protocol and then 2 months later, like, holy shit, I was operating at a 5. I thought I was all good. Like, I didn't think there was a problem. But, because it's so silent and gradual in the background, you don't really notice it kick in.
Nuts. And I think as well, like, this is just like from my own experience, because this is not real for other people. Their situation's a little bit different. But what I feel is just a lot of pressure from the world. Probably because I put a lot of pressure on myself. But I also find that with this new pressure of whatever the modern world is, and the stress that comes with it, like, it's kind of beautiful, because unless we like get back to healing, doing anti-stress modalities like meditation, visualization, making sure that our nervous system is calmed down, then we just turn into fat, inflamed pieces of shit who are grumpy, moody, and angry. And it's interesting because it's like we're in this beautiful position where it's like, well, if we want to have a lot of responsibility, we do want to make an impact, we do want to make change, like, part of that is to make sure that we're eating right, dealing with our stress, getting back to our bodies, getting back to our minds, getting back to our hearts, so that we can have the energy to cope. And I think it's beautiful, because it's like, well, the ones who don't are the ones that, will fall short in the end, or like implode. And the ones who do and understand this are like the secret silent kings who like really rise up and start to achieve something that they love, and it feels so much more wholesome and so much better than partying or whatever other vices out there, even money. You know what I mean? It's just so much better than that.
Yeah, 100%. And it all starts from if you don't have a good, healthy body and healthy mind, then the rest is going to collapse. So.
Crazy. Right. So I want to get into like supplements, food, or some tools for shit that we can do to eat. And if we just think about like the normal person who's eating semi-okay, but some chockies and some snacks and a bit of Uber Eats or like somewhere nice to eat, but most of the time it's good. It's like, what can we do to sort those people out?
I think the first thing is like, we don't need to bastardize any of that stuff. It's completely fine. So
you assholes for getting Uber Eats, by the way. I'll just Uber Eats to coffee this week, and I went out for dinner last night.
You piece of shit.
Shame and guilt everywhere.
Yeah.
No, but
I think
to choose the right things.
Yeah, I think it causes more stress than it solves if you're trying to be perfect and meticulous of everything. It's like I don't know. I think when you bring it back to what your goals are, like what you just said before, it's like if you value high performance in all areas of life, relationships, business, wealth, impact, performance, fitness, it's like it's pretty easy to make those decisions and not want to eat the bad food, so to speak. But it's like, hey, if you do, like you or me, it's like, hey, if we have Uber Eats every now and then, a chocolate, coffee, it's like, it's not the end of the world. But if it starts to become a massive part of your diet, and obviously people hear about the 80-20 rule, 80-20 rule is a good start for a lot of people. But even then, it's like, if you had a Lamborghini, would you only put 80% of the time would you put good fuel in? It's like you probably aim to put 100% of the time because you want it to operate at its best. And you know that if you do go in there one time and you put unleaded 91 in, it's still going to drive, but it's not going to drive at its best. Is the car going to break down? Is it going to implode? Like, no, it's the same as your body. It's like aim to put 98 in every time. Occasionally, if you put the 91 in, it's fine. But you understand if you make that decision, it's going to have an influence on the performance of your vehicle, i.e. your body.
Yeah, I just know a lot of people just don't even know what, high performance looks like. You know what I mean? In terms of eating. Like one thing, like, seeing you this morning at the markets is like, yep, go and buy a lot of food from the markets because you don't want it like
so much food
sprayed on all the shit, and buying the right amount of foods and understanding, slow cooker, rice cooker, how to cook veggies. And it's like, it's interesting because it's very similar. It's like you just almost got stuff on cooking all the time. Like most days I put a rice cooker in the morning and like I'll eat the whole thing throughout the day.
Yeah. And
then I'll clean the rice cooker at night. Then when I get up in the morning, I put a rice cooker on. Or have a slow cooker going for 2 to 3 days. And I'm like, sweet. Now for 4 of my meals over the next 2-3 days, I'm just going in there, grabbing the meat, putting the bowl. Like, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, and like some people think it's like so hard and they don't know what to buy and they don't know what to eat. And like, you've got all the hacks.
Yeah, I think it's just keeping it simple. I think a few of the things that you mentioned then is, like, food doesn't have to be complex, but the more, I truly believe the more organized your kitchen is, the more easy your life is going to be. And a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on the wrong things. I think if you start with a slow cooker, a rice cooker, an air fryer / oven, like, it's going to make food prep so much easier. It's going to make food prep so much more delicious. It's not going to feel like you're eating boring food that's taking forever to make. So it's like that solves probably the biggest problem I see for a lot of people, which is like, I don't have time, or, if I eat healthy is going to be boring. Like,
tell me some of the delicious shit. Tell me some delicious shit that'll like blow your mind in regards to health as well.
Man, so like the other night we made some fried rice and chicken, but what we did was like special fried rice, essentially our version. So like we put the rice in the rice cooker with some bone broth and some coconut oil, made that. Then from the chicken, we just diced up some basic chicken breast, put it in the bone broth marinade, and let that sit overnight for like 12 hours. Cooked up the rice, cooked up the meat, cooked up a bunch of vegetables, whipped it all up together. Simple. Good macros, carbs, fats, lots of different vegetables in there for your micronutrients, and was meals for the next 2-3 days because we made a huge batch. Example B, slow cooker, chuck a kilo of lamb in there, same thing, chuck the rice on, whip up the rice and the lamb. I made my own curry sauce, made ourselves a little homemade curry. It's like, I don't feel like I'm eating restrictive. It's like I'm literally eating like a lamb maximum curry and a chicken fried rice, but it's all like, I know it's all real ingredients, real food, no nonsense in there. Obviously, if you are someone that's been specific about your macros and calories, it's like takes 30 seconds extra to weigh it.
Yeah.
And we're ticking all the boxes there.
Yeah. And then like you put essential oils and stuff.
I don't eat them. I mean, I do sometimes. But
I literally drunk tea tree oil yesterday.
Yeah.
Don't tell everybody that, Corey.
Not safe. Not in food, but obviously, you can. That's a different topic. But so I think food-wise, like nutritional literacy is a big thing I work on with my clients, as you know. It's like I have a PDF for almost everything in terms of trying to make their lives easy. So I think trying to make it as easy as possible to start with, the same way as if you had a client who'd never counted macros before, it's like you might give them a meal plan for the first 4 weeks so they, to help them, guide them, but the goal is to then take them off the meal plan so then they can obviously just make their own decisions. It's the same thing with food. I think it's like for a lot of people, we're just so used to eating a certain way and we never get taught this at school. And if we do get taught at school, it's very mainstream government. It's not necessarily very tinfoil hat. It's not necessarily the best advice. And so it's not really anyone's fault. It's just like, this is what we've been indoctrinated with. So it's like almost trying to teach someone a different language of what good food looks like, what to be aware of in terms of reading nutritional labels. What is
Make sure you got fats. I find there's like a war. I still feel like there's a war on fats. I've been
100%.
eating a high fat diet for ages, and I'm like, I always feel way better.
Yeah, man. I mean, fats have, some of your essential vitamins. You have vitamin A, E, D, K, which are essential for a lot of different functions in the body. Vitamin A, vitamin D for your immune system. Vitamin A as well is good for your skin.
I got a question, yeah, especially. Oh man, could go on to about fats for days. Ghee, I love ghee. How do you use food and supplementation to increase someone's testosterone? And ladies, if you're listening to this, I don't want you to go out, because your like testosterone is great function to help you get back into your like best femininity, your sex drive, everything else, your motivation. So like this is sort of like for everyone here. So how do you use food and supplementation, and what are some like recommendations that you have that you think help people's testosterone increase the best?
Yeah, 100%. I did a presentation on this a few weeks ago, and all the guys were asking how they increase their test. And my answer is always testosterone. When we look at the hierarchy of systems, as we know, is the second last system in the hierarchy. It's your endocrine system. So the best way to improve your testosterone, which is the answer no one wants to hear, is improving your overall health and decreasing stress in these other systems. So I don't actually use a lot of direct supplementation, like, obviously when it comes to testosterone directly. Like
Dan's always like,
I've never given you anything direct. Like I think there is some good stuff out there that you could take as a 1%er on top. But for me, it's always about let's get gut health, immune health, nervous system health right, reduce the stress, deal with the infection, optimize gut, manage stress. Because in terms of like testosterone, in terms of production, it's like if we have an increase in stress, we have an increase in cortisol, which will suppress DHEAs and suppress essentially our production of testosterone. So it's like, well, if you have high stress, that's going to be the biggest number one thing that's stopping you from producing. And when I say stress, it's not just mental, it's all the different types of stress that we talked about before.
What are like just common types of stress, if you just check them out there?
So the ones we talked about before, like biochemical, food stress, essentially your body trying to deal with extra toxins from eating shit food, your body trying to deal with stress from emotions, your body trying to deal with extra stress from toxins from tap water and chemicals in your hair products, skin products, cleaning products, all the things we're exposed to in our modern day age. So
that's interesting because how you mentioned this, because you got your test really high, naturally.
984. I was spewing so close.
So close to 1,000?
Yeah.
What happened to you? You just like...
Well, that's literally like my approach is literally what I went through, where it was like I didn't take any testosterone boosters. I didn't take any testosterone supplements. All I did, and like it wasn't even my intention at the time. My intention at the time was I was very burnt out at parasites, candida, mold. I just wanted to feel good again because I couldn't get out of bed and I felt like an absolute piece of shit. So to me, it was just I wanted to be a normal, healthy human again. I got all my tests done just because obviously that's starting point. Wanted to know where I was at, and it wasn't even the intention. But then I got the test done. I think it was 15 or 16 weeks later, and the test went from 400 and something to 984, and I was like, "Whoa, that's hectic." And that wasn't even a conscious effort. But what I was doing when I reflected on it, I'm like, "All right, well." I went through my house, got rid of all the products I was using, low tox products, food, low tox food, eating real food, lifting heavy weights, sprint training, contrast therapy, heat exposure, cold exposure, doing the meditation, the breath work, the stress management. I was just very holistic in making sure I ticked every area. And it's like every area was probably only worth 5%, but I was doing every area to its maximal potential. When I see the problem with a lot of guys when they come to see me, it's like, hey, what's the best supplement to take? Should I be taking TRT? Should I be taking, some sort of anabolic? Like, to me, it's like you can, and it might help you improve, but the biggest thing that's tearing it down is that stress. So we need to figure out where the stress is coming from. Is the stress from infection? Is the stress from the food you're eating? Is the stress from your environment? Is the stress from your products? It's usually a combination of all of them, but until we deal with that, it's almost like, someone's trying to tear down the wall and you just keep trying to rebuild. It's like, why don't you stop the thing tearing it down before you focus on trying to rebuild it? Like the analogy we said before, rather than keep trying to find $20, like why don't you just stop your body spending so much money on things it doesn't need to?
That's a huge realization for people, eh?
And it's cheaper than a lot of the supplements people are buying out there. There's nothing wrong with them, but like, Tomcat Ali, things like this, it's like go and spend hundreds of dollars on supplements that don't work or they barely work because of the underlying stresses we're not managing, You're better off to, spend your $150 on a blood test, consult with a functional practitioner and spend 3 months dealing with your issues. Your testosterone will be much higher than 12 months later if you're just taking supplements.
Because it wants to come out. Your testosterone wants to be high.
Yeah.
Why are you letting it go down?
Exactly.
Crazy. I'm giving up caffeine again for a while.
Caffeine is good, eh?
It's good. But like I find I can only have I think about 3 to 4 coffees a week.
Yeah,
just
really.
single shots. And it's enough for my system.
Caffeine sensitive.
Yeah. As hell. Got DNA tests and everything. And it was like, your caffeine sensitivity? You are sensitive.
That's heartbreaking. Coffee fiend over here.
Yeah.
I think I was still smashing 2-3 coffees a day. Everyone's different though when it comes to caffeine in terms of how they metabolize it, half-life. Even for me, I can have coffee 3-4 p.m. and I'm pretty sweet. Other people can have coffee at 12 p.m. and they're still jacked up.
I can't have a coffee after 9 a.m.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, I'm like,
it's a small window.
Yeah, I don't mind. I was I have one. I just like the smell. So good. But also, I like matcha better. But one thing that Dan doesn't hate is supplements, though.
I do not
mention
supplements.
that. You're like supplement king. In terms of you're mentioning, you're like, don't take supplements, sort your shit out. But also, if you do want to take supplements, look what I've got under my jacket.
100%. I always say to you, I think I said this the other week, you're like, you have to say that on the podcast. I was like, people are just taking the wrong supplements or just the dumb supplements and they don't know why they're taking it. And this is the thing that gets me really pissed off. It's like these supplements are amazing when they're taken for the right reason. But it's if you don't know why you're taking something or there's no reason to take something, it's not that the supplement's good or bad. It's just is it actually useful in the context? It's the same as exercise prescription. It's what's the best exercise for glutes? It's they all work and they all don't. Which one's best for you at that time for the deficiency you have or for the outcome you want? Same sort of thing. So it's people say, oh, should I take magnesium? Should I take this? Should I take that? You could take all of them, but it's unless you want to take 20 supplements the rest of your life, and this is where food and diet comes into it. Your dad, for example, I was writing his meal plan on Chronometer the other day. And I'm like, cool. Based off your bloods, these are the deficiencies I see in vitamins. We can deal with a lot of those things just by eating the right foods that have the micronutrients that you're deficient in, whilst we then use supplements to go after the underlying infection that's causing a deficiency in the first place. So we have this dual approach of the supplements help deal with the thing, and then food helps deal with the byproduct of what that is causing. So yeah, when it comes to dealing with things like parasites, candida, mold, Helicobacter pylori or H. pylori, which is a stomach infection, candida, fungal overgrowth, SIBO, SIFO, all these
and what that's like in normal people is gut pain, bloating, eating something. Why is this happening? Oh, I feel weird. Oh, I'm tired after I eat that thing. Oh, I need to have a nap in the middle of the day. What is that? These are all the shit that
brain fog, memory loss, cognitive function is a big one for that too.
Reactivity of people. Why am I just fucking frustrated all the time?
Reactivity to products is a big one as well. Even certain types of clothing. A lot of girls will be like, oh, I wear certain, when I wear this type of clothing, I notice I'm a bit more sensitive, or certain jewelry, certain products. So these are all symptoms, and as one of my mentors says, you'll notice the whispers before they become screams. And those little things are usually the whispers your body's giving you as a hint to pop the hood and see what's going on. And the pop the hood is the blood test. Let's open up the hood. Let's investigate what's going on. Yeah.
So essentially, why are you taking the supplement you're taking?
Yeah.
Why?
And it's
I've questioned everything now. Look at my supplement cover and I'm like,
100%.
I'm just staring
I think the only ones that I say consistently, that I think are valuable, are magnesium. I think almost every single person I see is deficient in magnesium.
Well, why? Don't absorb properly. Just
don't have enough, to be honest. Especially if you're a strength training, resistance training athlete, it's you want to be having 100 milligrams per 10 kilos of body weight per day. I don't know many people having 800 to 1,000 milligrams of.
I shit my pants, bro.
Yeah, I'm a split dose, obviously. Don't take it all at once, disclaimer. But if we look at most, and again, most people where they buy and source out their supplements, if you go to a chemist warehouse and you buy the magnesium on the shelf, it's number one, you probably don't know what type of magnesium it is, how bioavailable is it, how well does it absorb, how much is actually in per capsule, how much do you need? It's most times you buy one that's on a shelf, it's probably has 100 milligrams and says take one a day. And it's probably, a citrate, which doesn't even absorb very well. So it's in that example, it's knowing what you're taking, how much to take, what type to take is a big thing too.
So you're also saying then when it comes to quality of the supplements,
absolutely,
just spend the money on the good shit, because it's
otherwise it's expensive urine.
Yeah, it's you have two. It's you have $1 coin that's worth $1, or then you have a piece of gold the same size of $1 coin that's worth like 100, and it's like, you know, one might be a little bit more expensive, but you're getting complete gold out of it rather
100%.
than like $1.
Big one I'm pretty big on, and I've used a few a lot of times in Chloe, is the like liposomal forms and liquid forms as well, because if people do have like gut issues, permeability issues, leaky gut, it's like they can, you know, you're taking the supplement, but you might not be absorbing it very well, which again means it's kind of a wasted money. And even in general, if we look at like capsule form, we have this thing called first pass metabolism, which is where your liver metabolizes a lot of these supplements and compounds. So you lose about 50% of the compound before it even gets to absorption in the bloodstream.
God damn it.
So it's like if you take a liposomal or sublingual, like a spray or a liquid, like, you know, a lot of the ones I've given you, the liposomal C, liposomal glutathione, you're going to get better absorption for two reasons. Number one, we bypass that first pass metabolism, but we also don't have to go through the gut, where essentially if we had a leaky gut, we could lose a lot of it as well. So
interesting.
It's like, so yeah, like if we bring it back, it's like the right supplement, the right type of that supplement, like the right quality, you know, the way it's processed, the form of it, like magnesium, there's multiple different forms, the right dosage, the right frequency, and more importantly, like the right reason, and then also the right duration. Like some things like we did together, it's like, we're going to do this for 14 days only, and then we come off it. You don't need to take this forever. More is not always better. It's like specificity, the same as exercise. It's like, your back, you know, you come in with a disc issue, we're going to do these exercises for 7 days, assess the response, and then we change it and we progress into different exercises.
Do a lot of saunas and ice baths, eat a lot of good food, and do some other exercises.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight up. So what are, just for like some people, if they just want to go try some stuff, like blow their mind, what are some things that you've got up your sleeve that is like, if you want to try some stuff to get a result, you can try this. Like, I know you've got some crazy brain concoctions. I know you've got some flushes, and I know you've got some other stuff. What are
some weird stuff?
Yeah, what are some weird stuff that you?
I think
that's like not that like you wouldn't recommend, but you're gonna recommend anyway because on the podcast. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
I think in general, starting point that I would recommend for most people listening is good quality magnesium, some sort of like magnesium glycinate, a creatine monohydrate, a fish oil that has like EPA, DHA, or eating regular fish, and the fulvic minerals that we've talked about, which we can go into if you'd like, and electrolytes. I think if you weren't sure where to start on supplements and you wanted stuff that's like going to be relatively like globally good for everyone, it's like those would be the ones I would have as a staple in my.
What about if I wanted to be as focused as possible? I want to have the highest fucking energy. I want my brain to just be like, whoa, like absolutely on fire. Essentially, like I'm just like, I feel like I can conquer the world right now. Have you got any potions for that?
Modafinil. No, magnesium threonate is good.
Yeah.
L-tyrosine and L-dopamine is L-tyrosine and L-theanine are a good combination that I like. So
with the magnesium.
Yeah, you can take them all together. GABA L-theanine is another one that's pretty common. You see that on like Joe Rogan's podcast and things. So like GABA, L-theanine, magnesium threonate, and then the theanine and tyrosine. Usually, to be honest, the most cheapest and effective form for me, in my opinion, because the other ones can be quite expensive. You can buy L-theanine and buy L-tyrosine in a powder form. L-tyrosine is a precursor to dopamine, so it's like your focus and your energy. And easiest way I explain it, it's like imagine if that door that over there had 1,000 little individual fairy lights on it. When you take dopamine's going to light up those lights, so it's going to turn things on. You're going to have the energy. However, it's like now you've got 1,000 things to focus on. You'll be like, oh my god, like very ADD. I can't focus. I can't pick one thing. Theanine essentially then works on your acetylcholine pathway, which will then help to focus on one light. So it's like
one bright as hell.
Yeah. So it's like they're all still turned on, but you can now laser into one and focus. So it's like L-tyrosine is going to work on that pathway, and then L-theanine is going to work on that pathway, and together they're a good little concoction to help with improving cognition, focus, but also then being able to stay on task and pay attention. So if you're someone who's very ADD, can't focus, and very stop-starty, task switching a lot of times, I find that can be a useful concoction.
Interesting. I love it. What's some things that you've been learning recently that's like new, fresh in your mind that you've been like, oh, this is new and this is helpful?
Man, I've been learning a lot of stuff. So my mentor, shout out to him, Dr. Stuart Gillespie. I've been doing a mentorship with him the last probably 9 or 10 months now. This is going into deep into the immune system and understanding how, like, obviously we all know the immune system is important, can't live without it, but just understanding how involved it is in a lot of these like common presentations and chronic presentations that we see in people, and understanding like how we can manipulate and drive different parts of the immune system to help people manage these symptoms, which is crazy to me because, like, again, I might get in trouble for saying some of this stuff because it's not conventional, but it's like, I think it's crazy because if you have a lot of these people that have these problems in the medical model, it's like unlucky. Yeah.
What kind of problems?
Like if people with like autoimmune issues, for example.
Well, how does that manifest? What are just some of the...
So I sent this to my client the other day. I was like, think of it as we have what's called like an insult, or like the insult to the body. So it's like you can have multiple insults we talked about before, the different types of stress, but usually there's one that triggers the initial inflammation. So it's like in the body we have inflammation. There's acute inflammation, which is good. Same as training. We have inflammation, stimulates healing, we repair, we grow, happy days. When your body gets stuck in a chronic cycle of inflammation and we can't turn it off or we can't manage it effectively, then this is where we can start driving a different pathway in our immune system that leaves us to be stuck, and it can start to then continue and become an autoimmune issue. So like this is when I was talking to you about, like, we have our innate immune system, which is our main immune system, which is like our white cells, our macrophages, our natural killer cells, etc. Then we've got this second immune system called our adaptive immune system, which has like the Th1, the Th2, Th17 we talked about. It's like if we get stuck in that adaptive immune system, it's almost been like stuck in your sympathetic nervous system equivalent. It's like we want it.
What are some symptoms of that? What are like just some common...
For which one, or all of them?
For all of them. What are just like common symptoms that you would have if it's not good?
It's like, we need another hour. So, I mean, it depends on the presentation. Let's say mainly like most of them are going to be either, neurological symptoms like we talked about. It could be lack of focus, clarity, brain fog, energy. Memory is a big one. Obviously gut, so sensitivities, reactions to food, skin conditions is a big one too. So for Th1, it's usually more of like those sort of viral effects. It might be more the mood aspect of things and neurological. For Th2, like it was what you had more of was more like the allergy, skin conditions, like what Chloe had. And then Th17 generally tends to be more of the autoimmune pathway. So,
and what are symptoms of autoimmune?
So symptoms wise are going to depend on which system's been affected. So autoimmune just means like your body is obviously attacking self. So an autoimmune condition, for example, might be like Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid. That's going to usually be associated with thyroid symptoms. There might be cold hands, warm or hot hands, feet, problems of weight loss, goiter in the throat, the eyes are bulging.
What's goiter?
Goiter is like, if you look at someone's throat, it's like their Adam's apple is really inflamed. So if you see
a gigantic Adam's apple.
Yeah. So it almost looks like a massive circle coming off it. Yeah. So it's pretty common when you have a thyroid issue.
Whoa, I just thought that meant you was more manly.
So there's a specific issue called Graves' disease, which is usually quite more common in females. So Graves' disease is a common thyroid issue in females, and they usually have the goiter. Versus Hashimoto's is usually we'll see like the eyes are quite protruded, like they're almost popping out of the eyeballs.
What do you think in terms of percentage? Right, like percentage of the population who are getting affected by these problems but wouldn't know that it's this shit?
I'd say at least a third. Like it's pretty prevalent. So like in terms of what I was saying before, like with if we do like a real fast track one, so I kind of think there's some sort of insult, infection, or like chronic stress in the body leads to chronic inflammation. Body can't manage the inflammation. This chronic inflammation increases stress in the body. And then over time, again, it's like, this is not something that happens in a week. It's like, this happens in 3 to 5 years. Eventually this chronic inflammation that can't be resolved can then lead to one of our systems or organs in the body, shutting down or being attacked, and then that organ in particular then becomes the autoimmune disease.
This is landing so hard for me, man. Like right now, it's like landing. If it's really just like all the symptoms that you're experiencing now is probably the summary and the results of all the habits and the decisions and time that you've spent literally for the past 5 years.
Yeah, 100%. And then it's like, well, you think if this was the problem, like let's say that was an infection that created the maladaptive immune response and the chronic inflammation, and then we end up here with this condition, it's like it kind of makes sense to go, well, let's deal with this, because if we deal with this, that's going to stop this, and then that's going to stop stress here. But that's where, like, I think a lot of times people get tossed away a bit in the medical model because it's like, oh, you've got this condition and unfortunately we can't do anything about it. It's irreversible, yada, yada, yada. It's like, hang on a minute. If we know that this caused this and this caused that, then would it not make sense to reverse engineer it the same way I'd reverse engineer a shoulder problem?
It's landing for me again. So for all my high performers listening, people go, I want to be the best. I want to be in the best energy. I want to be like feeling the best. All the rest of this. It's like essentially you're already at 100. Like your body and how your brain works and everything is like your maximum potential is 100 and you've got that. You've just put in shit in the way, which is just stopping you from getting to 100. So it's not like you have to be better. It's not like you have to go out there and do different shit in order to be a high performer. It's just to manage what's already going on and move levers around, sort of like a jigsaw puzzle, or like what I'm imagining is like if a water's going through a funnel, and I want to get to the top, and there's all these like magical well, not magical, but there's this path of levers, and it's like if you can manage all the levers in the right way, eventually it'll open up the path and the water can flow through. But if one lever's blocked, it's going to stop you from
100%. Path of least resistance.
Yeah, and it's like the whole paradigm for me sort of shifting around like I don't have to keep trying to crush whatever it is to get into like the highest, like best version of myself and my highest potential. It's like I just want to make sure that all of these lenses and routines and habits are just I'm allowing myself to be there by not doing the bad shit and making sure that I'm making the right decisions and that my energy is focused.
Yeah, 100%. And man, like your prime example, when I say a lot of people like imagine listening to this in your audience, like it's 9 times out of 10, it's doing less and doing more of the right stuff. Yeah. And in my example, like people I work with, like a lot of times people are like what you just said, what can I take? Like, what can I do? 9 times out of 10, it's stop taking so much. It's like, what can we, it's like, it's usually what's more important is usually what we take out rather than what we put in. Yeah. Usually it's doing less rather than doing more. Usually it's being more specific rather than being like what I said to you, be a sniper, not a shotgun. Yeah. Because in most scenarios, it's like I'm doing all these things and I want to do more ice baths and more saunas and train harder and, just more. And it's like, hey, do you care about the outcome or do you care about like how you get the outcome? It's like, obviously the process is important, but it's like, if you get your dream outcome doing 30% less, but just do the right things rather than do all the things, like, would you not prefer that? And I guarantee most people like you, it's like hell yeah. Yeah. So like,
so I learned this. It's so funny. Hang on a second. Let me get this. So I learned this recently because I have this like archetype, like kind of tarot card things that we've got. And it's just interesting because Chloe and I just like to look at it, but it's really good because it's based itself off a lot of Jungian theory and a lot of like mindset stuff. And one of the archetypes that like we just pulled out of there was called the sustainer. And it's really interesting when we look at like archetypes and like just sort of some spiritual stuff in terms of like what characters play without your body. It's like the archetype of the sustainer in a negative light, for example, if you're possessed by the archetype of the sustainer, it's like you're stressed out, you're tired, you're overwhelmed, and you're exhausted. In the positive light of the sustainer, it's like what you're doing is you're focusing on the right things. You're doing less of the shit things, and you're way more abundant in all areas. It's just so funny you saying that because I'm like, man, that's one thing we want to adopt is the light side of the sustainer more often. So, right, that blew my mind. The people who are listening, Dan, where can they find you? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, man. So mainly just on Instagram. I'm not too techie. So at dr.daniel.kirkbride or at _movement_medicine_.
Yes, Dr. Dan Kirkbride, ladies and gentlemen, and movement and medicine. Hell yeah. I like to leave all the listeners with a challenge. If you could challenge them with one thing today, what's the challenge you want to give them?
Oh, sinus rinse.
That's actually a really good one. All right, give them a recipe. What's a good sinus rinse recipe?
I might start them a little bit softer. They can do the go to Woolies or the chemist and buy yourself some sort of nasal flush. Fess is a brand I think I know of. We're gonna chuck a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, Celtic salt. We're gonna jump in. I probably won't put the tea tree in. If you game,
do tea tree.
Yeah,
do it.
You can pop 1 drop only of tea tree. 1 drop of the biocide and botanicals, which most people won't have, so we'll probably just say tea tree. And then if you have some sort of activated charcoal, we can put a very, very minor amount of the teaspoon in as well. Shake it up,
in one nostril, out the other nostril. And then, give yourself 30 seconds for your brain on fire in between.
Yeah, guys, if you have any questions, shoot down a message, because he's just like a wealth of knowledge. If anything popped on here, you're slightly confused, you wanted to dive deeper into something, just send Dan a message straight onto Instagram, and you're actually active as hell on Instagram, so he'll get back to you on that at some point. So, dude, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. That was absolutely amazing.
Appreciate it, brother. Much love.
Hell yeah. I feel like Arnie in The Predator. We're just like, nah. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. Send it to someone. Chuck us a follow. You know all the things. Thank you so much. Bye.